phenomenal job. And I also want to thank her son for calling in and giving us so much insight and so much helpful information. So, Romanay, we're back together.
Hi.
And last week we discussed the topic that we're going to just talk about tonight, and I thought it was very important because a lot of people do not really understand the ins and outs of the child support system and the family court system as well. And a lot of people are caught up in it, but don't really understand the ins and outs. And I know so many people are just trying to avoid the child support system, because there is a belief that it is unfair to men. Is it?
Is it unfair?
Right. I don't know. Yes, like all things in this country, it is not balanced. It's always weighted in favor of one as opposed to balancing it out. So there are a lot of men who are mistreated in the system. There's no question. There's been a case of a man who was arrested for overpaying child support. They said he paid too much, and this man was sanctioned for paying too much child support. You always hear the stories about the men who are quote unquote deadbeats, who are going out of their way to avoid two things: work and child support. So those are the stories we hear, but there are other stories as well. Men who are trying to navigate these difficult waters, as it relates to child support and the family court system. And having been a police officer, I have some at least rudimentary knowledge of the family court system. So as a police officer, involvement is typically when you have juveniles who are arrested. You don't take them to the regular criminal courts.
Mm-hmm.
They go to the family court system. In that case, they're typically adjudicated there, depending on the seriousness of the offense, and if the prosecutor wants to bind the case over to an adult court. But there's so many facets to the family court system. And I know you went and you did your homework. So tell us a little bit about what you found
out. Well, what I found out is that people think that men are paying these crazy amounts of child support.
Mm-hmm.
What I found out first and foremost is that out of all of the child support orders, only 60% of those orders are actually carried out and followed up with payments.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I think that the bigger question that we need to ask is, we just automatically go to you guys and say, how does this affect men? But I think the question should be, how does child support in the family court system affect Black families? Not just the men, because behind the men who are supposed to be leading is a mom, and then there's the children.
Mm-hmm.
So I think women are faced with this big question, the $60,000 question, which is, do I honor the man, the father of my children, right? And not take him to court for child support because I know that systemically it's racist, right? Or do I honor my children and do what's best for my children by putting myself in a better socioeconomic position so that I can then take better care of my children? So it kind of leaves women in this torn position.
The court system, by its very nature, is adversarial. And when you enter that system, you have to keep in mind you're entering an adversarial system. Anytime you go to court, say for a divorce or something like that, you hire attorneys, and one of the first things they tell you is don't talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
When you go into the court system, your case is going to be decided either by a judge or someone who is court appointed
Mhm.
to listen to your case and make a decision. They don't want you to talk to one another. They want all communication to go through either the judge or a court appointed representative. So it becomes a very adversarial system. And of course, the family court system and child support has had a destructive effect on the Black community. First and foremost, as I said, this is an adversarial system, so it tends to drive people apart. And because of that, there's a lot of animosity that builds up on both parts.
Mhm.
And who ends up suffering is the child or
Mhm.
children, because the man feels that the court is in favor of the woman and doesn't really listen to what I have to say, in terms of, I work every day, but I don't make a lot of money. And she knew that. And now child support is asking me, I know in New York it's about 17%. Here, I believe, what is it, 21%?
Well, it's 21%, but they put a cap on it too. So even
Right.
in New York, they have that 17% thing. But if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 17% for one child, and it goes up in increments until you reach a maximum of
Right.
21%,
Right.
and then they cut it off. So you could have 10 kids and still just get the 21%.
And of course, 21% of what? So if a person is making $30,000 a year, right?
Mhm.
We're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000,
Mhm.
give or take. In today's economy, that's not going to feed. If you have more than one child together, that's not going to feed two children.
No.
And you have to take into account things like childcare, things like doctor's visits. If a child needs braces or something like that, these things can get very expensive.
Mhm.
So a lot of men don't trust the system, so they want to avoid that. And unfortunately, they'll go to the woman and they'll make promises and they don't keep them. So that puts her in a situation where, okay, do I trust him and hope that he will do what's right? Or do I go to the system and demand that he do what's right?
Are you waiting for me to not be the good person tonight? Because I think it's so many gray areas, and I think that it has to be like individually based, because like you said, some parents are able to co-parent, right? And are able to come to the table. And guess what? I shouldn't even have to say, as a mom, I shouldn't have to say, I need X amount of dollars
Mm-hmm.
a month. You should just be being a dad, and you should be taking a look and seeing where there is a need, right? And meet the need. Because even if I'm taking care of all of the household bills, but you're going and you're buying groceries and you're taking care of their clothes, is it really something to complain about? But now I'm gonna play the devil's advocate,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna say there are a lot of women who earnestly go to court to get child support because they've exhausted, right, their
Mm-hmm.
attempts at trying to get the father to co-parent with them. But I think what makes women look bad, right, is when we have women who, for lack of a better term, who have some misappropriation of funds going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they think that men, it's so common to hear men say, if a woman's hair is done, they say, oh, she went and got her hair done with my, and that's because of the one bad apple, right? One
Mm-hmm.
bad apple gives this perception of the whole bunch, and that's not the case. So I think that it has to be individually based, and I think that um, the part of the system that bothers me the most is when you start talking about the incarceration of Black men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because they don't pay child support. And trust me, I'm an advocate. I think men should help to take care of their kids.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
But I don't see where locking up someone who wouldn't ordinarily have a criminal record, how does he then, after he has a record, how do you put him in a position to provide for his children?
Well, the idea is we're not really thinking in the best interest of the child. You know, in this country, we incarcerate more people than any two industrialized nations combined.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, for the past, I don't know, 25, 30 years, we have been investing in private prisons. It is extremely profitable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, years ago, if somebody, growing up in Brooklyn, somebody went up north, right? Say, yo, man, just send me some sneakers. You know, you go to Models, right? Or wherever you got your sneakers from, box them up and send them up north. Nowadays, you have to buy from the prison. You have to send them money. So recognizing that these corporations recognize they have a captive audience, right? So now they're selling these products in the jail at double the price that you can buy them retail. You know, if you've ever got a phone call from a correctional institute, the cost of that call is astronomical. I think it's like up to $2-3 just to connect you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's sometimes 50 cents, $1 per minute. So companies like AT&T invest, Citibank invest in these private prisons. In fact, there was a controversy about Michael Jordan, who was heavily invested in private prisons. So the idea is, yeah, if we can take a man off the street and incarcerate him, we can put him to work for our corporation to make money for us. Whether he goes out to dig ditches, right? Or whether we have his family sending him money and he's buying from us. So, this is not about the safety and welfare and protection of these children. It's about money.
So what do we do? What do moms do? And let me just rephrase that. Because we do that too. And I had a conversation with someone and they, it's important for us to mention let's first define, right, that the person who gets child support is the custodial parent.
Right.
Custodial parent means the parent who has primary custody of the child or children. Custodial can be a mom or a dad.
Mm-hmm.
The non-custodial parent is the parent that is responsible for child support. Another point to bring out is that the custodial parent is the one who has custody the majority of the time. Because then there were other situations where parents have split custody and nobody has to pay child support. You can't.
Right.
The non-custodial is not in effect there because everybody has equal joint custody. But the custodial parent can be the male or female, the mom or the dad.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to just say that it's the women who are going to court for child support and that it's the men who are not paying child support. But there are a lot of non-custodial moms that are not compliant with child support orders either, which is why we have that 60%, only 60% of child support orders are actually fulfilled. That doesn't specify that those all belong to men. That's just court orders for non-custodial parents.
Now, I work with at least one person who had custody of his children, and his former wife was ordered to pay child support. And I can remember having a conversation with him probably 15 years ago. And during that time, I think she owed someone in the neighborhood about $80,000 in arrearages from child support. Typically, what the family court does, they want to identify the best parental resource. The perspective of the court is usually that the mother is the better parental resource. I guess their thinking is kind of archaic in the fact that, well, mom is normally sitting at home, working in the home, taking care of the children, and that's not reality.
Answer it over there.
Oh, we have a call coming in.
Yeah, answer it over there.
Welcome to the Ron and Romanay, Reason for Reason. What's your name and where you calling from?
Oh, well, this is Kim. I'm looking to talk to Harry O.
I think you called the wrong show.
Nah, I ain't called no wrong show. Montero. Oh, he know me. It's King. So my name is King, man. I'm from New York, from Soundby.
Yeah, tell them being here in another at 7:00.
Yeah, they'll be in at 7.
At 7? Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate it, man.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right.
Thanks for
All right.
calling.
All right, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so
Well,
as I was saying, they try to identify the best parental resource, and typically the belief is that it's the mother, which probably in most cases it is. It's not always, because just as men are having issues, things like problems with drugs, problems with maintaining employment, prior incarcerations, women are undergoing some of those same situations, some of those same problems. So the woman is not always the best parental resource. So, as in the case I just described, there are some women who are paying child support, some women who are like the men, ducking work and ducking child support too.
and I think we have this idea that the court looks and says the mother is the better parental resource.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of times men don't come in looking to be the parental resource. They don't, I mean, and of course, there's always an anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I mean, overall, men are not coming into the courtroom even considering that, because a lot of them don't even realize that that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I worked when I was in undergrad, I worked at children and youth and was in court to witness many people go to court and parents fighting over custody, and even in times when children were removed from the home. A lot of men automatically assume that the mom is going to be given custody,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't even seek out custody. But if you go to court and both parents are suitable parents, you can get joint 50% custody without even fighting for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's your right as a parent.
Right. I just think that a lot of men are intimidated by the family court system,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of like I'm guilty when I walk in the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to listen to what I have to say. Custody is normally granted, in most cases, granted to the mother, and she kind of called the shots.
Mm.
All the judges are going to say, hey, you got to pay. Well, what about those men who, look, I don't mind paying, but I'd like to see my child or my children? And you have sometimes mothers who withhold the children from seeing their father, from having contact. And sometimes it is for personal reasons.
Mm-hmm.
She is angry. She's hurt that this relationship ended and under the circumstances of it ending. So she's going to withhold access to the children. And that happens. And you hear that quite often from men like, hey, listen, I'm paid every month, but I don't get to see my children.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these guys don't want to go to court because in their mind, no one's going to listen. They're going to take her word and that's it. My side just doesn't get heard.
But why? Because we don't just pull this stuff out the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of these stereotypes, right? They started somewhere. And by no means am I saying that I agree with them, because I raised 2 Black men,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't agree with having our men caught up in the system.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't agree with our men not being accountable, right, for their children, right? But we collectively have to find a solution and a means of accountability minus the court system.
You know, it's interesting you should bring that up. You know, both of us being from New York, in New York City and probably other jurisdictions as well, Orthodox Jewish people are permitted to have their own extrajudicial system. In other words, certain offenses the judge will give to this extrajudicial group, and they will decide what would be best for this individual. Now, I know it is prevalent among the Orthodox Jewish community, and if there is such a dispute over things like child support, the community, the rabbis, and what have you, will get together and make a determination and see to it that this order was enforced.
Mm.
It would be great if we had such an apparatus we could use where we could say, okay, instead of putting you into the system, you'll meet with the council. And the council will look at your situation, her situation, in terms of income and things of that nature, and make a fair determination, right, on who will get custody of the children, how much should be paid, if anything, right? Because a lot of times guys will say, well, she makes a lot more money than me, right? So because of that, I don't live with her. I have my own apartment or house. In order for me to maintain a roof over my head, if I pay her 17% of my income, then I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to be out on the street. So she makes a lot more money. She can afford to care for the children without any help from me. Is that fair? That's a tough question, because who determines what's fair? It's a matter of perception, right?
My question would be to the dad who says, I don't make enough money to contribute financially. My question would be, well, what is your contribution going to be? Because sometimes your contribution doesn't have to be financial.
Mm-hmm.
But what is your contribution?
And that's a fair question. And if you do not have the money for whatever reason, then you should be there for the children in terms of other needs. Mom works late, dad is there taking care of those children.
Mm-hmm.
Dad prepares a meal. The children they're sick. They need to go to the dentist, whatever. Dad will step up and fill that role that typically mom would fill. But mom is working. She makes the most money. She might be working long hours or longer hours. So as the father who is unable to contribute financially, well, there are other things you can do. The children should never wonder, well, where's dad? How can we never see dad? They should see dad all the time. Dad should make himself available all the time. If you can't contribute, financially, contribute in other ways.
And it's important to say that the mom, or less, because we can't discriminate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the custodial parent
Mm-hmm.
needs to be cooperative, right? Because sometimes the non-custodial parent wants to do those things, but for whatever reason, they haven't resolved their relational issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't cooperate. And so that's a whole nother situation, because before you could even get to that co-parenting place,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make peace with one another, right?
Right.
You have to be able to say, I'm going to put the kids first. Like, we need to put our stuff aside,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to do what's in the best interest of the kids. Or how about this? We suck together.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we could be great as parents,
Mm-hmm.
right? As co-parents, but we suck together, and just being able to The same way we say we separate our personal self from our professional self, being able to separate our romantic selves, right, from our parenting selves.
Right. But the problem is that we're entering an adversarial system, the court system, right? And if we, as a couple, we're not able to abide by each other's rules, right? Because if we're breaking up, somebody violated some rules somewhere. Now you're forced to abide by the court's rules, right? And the court now has a means in place to punish you if you're not going to follow the guidelines set down by the court. And what happens is the man has no recourse against the court. If the judge says, okay, Mr. Johnson, you are going to pay Mrs. Johnson $2,000 a month. That is my decision, and it is so ordered. And if you do not pay, then a warrant will be issued for your arrest. Okay. He has no recourse against the judge or against the system. His anger now is directed toward whom?
Toward mom.
Absolutely. So it only tears the family further apart. It in no way is a system that brings families together. I mean, that's what it's designed to do, supposedly, but it does not.
I think that it's been a myth in our community that the system was designed to tear apart our family, right? But we just have to be honest when we are sharing the data, and the data shows that child support was initially created for white women. It was created for white families, right? And then, of course, at some point it included us. And I don't think it was restructured. There was no new model that was designed to accommodate Black families. And so because we already have generations of and layers of issues, right, with family issues, familial issues, and because we were already, our men were already, some people are going to say, Romanay, like, what does this have to do with it? But it does. Our men were programmed to not be with their children from slavery times when they were pulling them out of the home and separating us from the men in the family. So we have to collectively just say to ourselves, and this is for the brothers. The brothers have to make a commitment and say that I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to take care of my kids, right? Take care of your kids. And then guess what happens? When you take care of your kids, and if you know you're dealing with a woman and you can't trust the woman, then you're going to take care of your kids in a manner where you can document that you're taking care of your kids. And then if she goes to court, guess what's going to happen? There is no wage attachment. Right. Because you can document that you've been taking care of your kids. But if you're just screaming that you're taking care of your kids and you can't document that you are taking care of your kids, and you claim it's her, but yet she's saying that you're not, and you can't prove it, because if you know what you're dealing with, why wouldn't you document it?
Absolutely. Now, there's probably some people listening who had dealings with the family court system and who have some opinions, some strong opinions. So why don't we open up the phone line? The number here is 888-304-4401. Again, that's 888-304-4401. Call us if you've had any experience with the court system, and let us know a little bit about your outcome, because I know a lot of men are disgruntled because, this system, they view it as being punitive. And it wasn't designed to be punitive, but it is, right? And if you are a young man who's working at, say, a fast food restaurant making $15 an hour, and the judge tells you, okay, you need to pay $400 a month for this child, and your take-home wages after taxes is about, say, $600. So that gives you $1,200 a month. $800, $400 going that is going to be just subtracted right away. Usually $800. So with that $800, you have to pay rent, all your other bills, transportation, and everything else. Can you do that? And I think that a lot of men are fearful of that, so they try to avoid the system. And let's be realistic. You have a lot of men who really don't care. I remember a couple of years back watching an episode of Beyond to Fix My Life, and there was a brother, young man, probably in his mid-40s, who had 35 children.
I remember that.
So, that's a situation where, look, we all make mistakes, but 35 of them, that's not a mistake. That is someone who does not care. And when you talk about men stepping up to the plate, and God knows that's something that needs to happen. But I think one thing is important, and I hear women say it all the time, and that's self-care. If a brother does not love himself, he does not love the woman, and he certainly doesn't love those kids because he doesn't have that love in him for himself. And if you're not caring for yourself, then you're not going to care for anybody else. So that's something that young men need to learn. Understand who you are. Understand where you come from. If you don't know where you come from, you can't know where you're going. So self-care is so important. Self-love is so important because that's going to determine your relationship with your woman, and your relationship with your children, and your relationship with the community.
And to the women, because this is what we have to start to do. We got to kind of start to address the guys, the brothers and the sisters. To the sisters, you can't complain that he doesn't want to be active and then you don't let him be active. You have to let him be active. You have to let him, if he can't contribute financially, you have to ask yourself, is it just about money, or do my children need a father? And if they need a father, because they do, right? Newsflash, they do. In spite of us thinking that, that we can be dads. I've seen that on Facebook, and I've actually responded to that on Facebook. When it's Happy Father's Day.
Right.
You're not a father.
Right.
You're a good mom. You're a great mom. You can be a phenomenal mom, but you can't be a father. Right. So we have to really just admit that we need dad and that the kids need dad. And so we have to stop because we're angry. So you could be angry, but you can't be angry to the extent that you let it interfere with your children having a dad. Because then guess what? You painting a bad picture of dad, but you just as bad as dad if you're not letting him be a dad. So we have to get to that point where we say to the sisters have to, they have to own that we have to let these guys, if they can't contribute financially, then they need to find a different way to contribute, and we need to help them.
Well, I'm going to say this to the sisters.
All right, sisters.
Yeah, in the animal kingdom, when a female is prepared to mate, she only chooses the strongest of that species because she knows a weak child cannot adapt, cannot escape from the predators, right? So she's like, no, brother, I see you, but you got a broken hoof, right? I need someone who is strong, someone who will produce, with whom I will produce strong, children. For our sisters, do not feel sorry for this brother. Do not. If the brother is not prepared, and when I say prepared, I'm talking emotionally, I'm talking psychologically, I'm talking financially. If he is not prepared, then he is not for you. Because you hear so many sisters, you hear these horror stories. Sister, did you ask him the tough questions? Did you know who you were dealing with before you laid down? Now, I'm not blaming the sisters. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm cautioning you is, Be careful who you decide to hook up with, because what happens when you have children and the brother's beating feet? Well, if he did it before with some other women, do not think he won't do it to you. Iyanla Van Zandt said, no, not Iyanla Van Zandt. Oh, God. Her name escapes me. But she said, when they show you who they are the first time,
Believe them.
believe them. Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She said it. You know, believe it when they show it to you. If they show you that they are not worthy, don't feel sorry and say, well, maybe if I show him enough love. No, that brother's got to love himself. He's got to have his own. In order to begin a relationship, you have to be prepared on multiple levels. So that's just, you know, my caution to the sisters.
And you said you're not blaming the sisters.
No,
right?
no.
But we're not blaming the sisters, but we holding the sisters accountable.
We got to hold ourselves accountable,
Yeah,
men and women.
No, but the sisters have to be accountable.
Yes.
Because what happens is they linking up with guys, and I've said this to young women all the time. You can't link up with potential.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
you look at these guys and you thinking, oh, he has the potential to be this and that and this and that. But the fact of the matter is, when you take him and you accept him, you're accepting him in the condition or state that he's in right then and there. Stop thinking that you're going to fix something.
Right. Right. Now, I never really gave this a whole lot of thought until I had a daughter. So for my daughter, looking down the road, when she's ready to begin dating, what kind of young men are going to approach her? And see, my dad was a very strict man. I'm not as strict, but there's certain things I just will not tolerate. You cannot come through my door with your pants falling off your behind. You cannot. You cannot come into my house and not open your mouth and speak. If you have not learned those things at home, you certainly aren't going to learn them at my house. These are things that you learn through the stage of development. And if you don't have it, you're not going to be welcome in my home. It's going to be a problem. So while we hold the sisters accountable, the brothers need to be held accountable as well. And what that means is, men of my generation, we need to reach out to the younger men so that they don't find themselves trapped in the family court system, in the criminal justice system. We need to catch these brothers before they fall. Because once you fall, it's really hard to get back up on your feet.
And just saying to both the guys and the girls, you know, I heard a pastor say this one time, and he said, you are the measure of your mate. Right? So when we so quick to say, oh, she's this or she's that, or oh, he's this or he's that, you chose him.
Absolutely.
So if he's this and that, maybe it's time to do some self-introspection and find out why that's what you keep looking for, right? And then again, just really getting to a place where you say, is it about the kids? Because we take this whole subject on child support and we make it about the men when this is not about the men. This is about the kids.
And you know, you mentioned a pastor. So I'm just going to use a biblical verse. And it says, you tell a tree by the fruit it bears. What kind of fruit are we bearing? You know, I saw a news flash come across my phone a couple of hours ago, and it said there was another school shooting today.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And this is a common occurrence in this country. You know, what kind of fruit are we bearing in this country where we have things like school shootings, where our children have lost respect for themselves and their parents? So, you know, it's about us coming together to become that village again, where we can really raise our children, where not just your child, but the child up the street, the child across the street, you look upon them as being your child as well, and you are concerned about their welfare. And so many times we know something isn't right, but we remain silent. We see the kid coming to school, child is unkempt, right? Child's clothes are dirty. This child is hungry. You know something isn't right, but you don't say anything. And then when there's a bad outcome, you kind of feel bad. Well, maybe I should have said something. Absolutely, you should have said something, because we're all accountable for our actions as well as our inactions. Not saying something.
So, do you think that in instances where the non-custodial parent is non-compliant or in violation of the child support order, do you think that they should be incarcerated?
Well, realistically, if you put someone in jail, how's that going to put food on the table for these children? It's not going to do that. Unfortunately, the court was looking for some way to enforce their rulings. So
I'm gonna jump in here right quick.
Go right ahead.
You know who deserves to be in jail?
Who's that?
The guy that doesn't take care of his children, but he walks around with the latest designer clothes on. He got the Mercedes Benz and the BMW. Now, if he can afford all those things and not take care of his kids, lock his ass up. I'm gonna leave it right there.
And
that
you know
came
what?
From a man.
But and he's right. Take those things, the cars, the jewelry, the clothes, sell it and feed those children. To put a man in jail who has little or nothing, you're not putting food on the table. You know what you could do if these guys, and let's say these guys are, young men who are healthy, who are just not able to maintain a job. You know what you could do? Put them in the military. And the military is going to make sure that every month, every 2 weeks, that mother gets a check. Those children are going to have health insurance through the federal government. So putting them in jail doesn't really solve the problem because there's no income. Putting them in the military, steady income. I mean, it's just one option, right? But I get it. Something has to be done. We don't want to sick the system on these young men, but what recourse is there? And I get it.
Okay, so if we agree that if you're non-compliant with the order and you have a means to pay child support, you should pay it, or you should be locked up, like Terry said. Or how about this one? Should that be contingent or based on a child support order that is really reflective of what your income is? Or do you think that things should remain the same and it should be across the board numbers, percentages for child support? Or do you think it should be individually designed?
Well, the system, the family court system, the welfare system, all of these systems, the numbers that they use for eligibility are archaic. For people who are on, say, public assistance, they might get $300 a month. In today's economy, that's well below the poverty line. These numbers haven't been updated in years. Even now, when you talk about child support being 21%, again, if we're using someone who works in the fast food industry who's making $15 an hour, what is 21% of that? Is it enough to put food on the table? Is it enough to provide health care? Because that is extremely important, providing access to health care for these children. So we're not talking about a lot of money that, these people are making. So we need to make it contingent upon, yes, how much they make, right? If you make more, you should certainly pay more. And, as someone who is a father, it's all about sacrifice. You bring the children into the world, understanding from the time they come into this world, it is now about sacrifice for this life that the universe has given me.
And I hate to say it, but the custodial parent really doesn't have an option. They have to sacrifice. The child is in the home with them. They have to sacrifice. They don't have the option to say, I'm not paying this week. Or you're not eating this week because I don't feel like paying this week. So
Right.
you're not eating. They don't have the option to do that. So the custodial parent is put in a position where they have to be a parent. And I've actually said this to somebody before. A custodial parent is put in a position where they have to be a parent, whether they want to be or not.
Mhm.
When they wake up in the morning, they don't get to choose today and say, do I feel like being an active parent today? They have to be an active parent, because if they don't, the ship sinks.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and then it's just important to really, I have pulled these numbers. People think the child support the figures are so great. And this article that I read said the median amount of child support that's paid to African American mothers is $2,200.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you understand that's a year?
Mhm.
So even in instances where you paying $2,200 a year, how's a parent taking care of a kid on $2,200 a year?
You're not going to.
No.
And I think any reasonable person would know that. But unfortunately, we've reached that time, and
You got 17 more minutes. Keep going.
Oh,
Okay.
because we ran
So-
say, okay.
oh yeah, yeah. I think any reasonable person understands that you cannot feed a child on $2,200 per year. You know, that's an insult,
Mhm.
right? And that's what I mean about these numbers being updated.
They're dinosaur numbers.
Very much so.
Mhm.
And, you know, it only hurts these children, and it only hurts the families. And listen, I agree with you that something needs to be done, and something drastic, because we're losing generations of young people. You know, families are falling by the wayside, and we cannot rely on the government to fix us. You know, the government, whenever we've gone to the government and asked them for help, what have we gotten? You know, we asked for civil rights, we got beat in the head. We asked for voting rights, we got lynched. We asked for justice, and it was denied repeatedly. So it's not something that we're going to get from the federal government. This is something that we're going to have to do internally. We're going to have to grab hold of these young men and let them know, hey, young man, if you want to be with a woman, then you need to learn how to first care for yourself.
Mhm.
Then you be able to care for a woman and understand the needs of a woman, and then be able to care for a child as well as the community. Because what you want to do is provide safety for that woman and that child. And that extends beyond the household. It extends to the community. You know, some communities you go into, you just know they're safer than others. You have people out there who are going to say, no, you're not going to sell drugs on my corner.
Mhm.
You know, my woman is going to be safe coming home. Bullets are not going to be flying, you know, through my walls, through my windows. You know, that's not the kind of life we choose to live. So those are things that we have to do with these young men. And the sad part is a lot of these young men understand the realities of the child support system and the family court system because they didn't see their dads.
Mhm.
So in order to be a man, you got to see a man. And a
Mm.
lot of them have not. A lot of them have no clue to what it's like to be a man. So, you know, it's incumbent upon us as men of my generation to reach out to these young men, take hold of them, and try and catch them before they fall too far.
I agree. And I'm going to also say that men need to know that you have rights too, right? So if you go to court, I'm just sitting here and I'm looking over this, and only 55% of absent fathers have visitation privileges. And then 7% have joint custody. The other 38% have nothing,
Mm-hmm.
which means they didn't ask for anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? But 7%, only 7% of men have joint custody.
Mhm.
And again, it's not something that you can't get. It's not something that's unattainable. I could remember going through my divorce and the judge asking my ex-husband, Mr. Lashley, are you seeking joint custody of your children? This is not something that you can't have.
But now, yes and no, because if the judge is going to grant joint custody,
Mm-hmm.
well, the court needs to know, well, where do you live, sir?
Yes.
What are your living conditions?
Well, that's different.
Is it safe to bring children in there? Do you have your own apartment, your own home? What do you do for a living, sir? How do you make your money? Because we're not going to put the children in jeopardy if you're like, shall we say, a street pharmaceutical specialist. That we're not going to do, right?
But here's the thing, though, Ron.
Mhm.
It's just so important to remember that's not all of our men.
It's not. It's
And,
not.
and that's what we have to remember to do. We're perpetuating the picture that they try to paint
Mhm.
when we say stuff like that, because that's not really who we are. The majority of our men are good dads.
Mhm.
The majority of our men take care of their children. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Every generation they get a little better.
Mhm.
Even the ones that are thuggish want to be dads. It's a trophy. It's become a trophy in the hood,
Mhm.
to be a dad. So we got to just say that
If
they
they can live long enough.
yeah, but see, that's
Yeah.
what it is. But they want to be parents. They want to be parents. So when I look at numbers that say only 55% of men have visitation, why? When if you're in court for child support, because that's where they get these numbers from.
Mhm.
This
But-
means you
but-
were
but-
in the family court.
But you also got to keep in mind that most of the men in our community that in the family court system, he goes in there alone. He doesn't go in there with an attorney. He goes in there alone, and most of us don't understand what's really going on in that courtroom because most people in America have a 6th grade reading level of understanding.
Mm.
Okay, most people can't read a standard apartment lease and understand it.
Mm.
All right, so you have to think that the person that's in that courtroom, whether they're male or female, if they have not excelled to higher education on a college level, their understanding is that of a middle schooler. So they're really not listening. They want you to tell them what their rights are.
Mm.
They're not inquiring.
And that
That's a
does not
good
happen.
point.
That does not happen. Because I can tell you from my experience as a police officer, most people you encounter do not know their rights.
Mm.
Exactly.
People are aware of the Constitution, but do not know what's written there, what the police can do. Most people don't know. So when the police pull you over,
Ron, they don't know their rights. It's just
Right.
like Coca-Cola convinced everybody that it's the real thing.
right,
It's the same. It's the same concept.
right,
You know, there's constitutional rights, but you don't know what it is.
and that and,
Coca-Cola's the real thing, but you don't know what it is.
right, and that's the problem. You walk into a courtroom, will be it criminal or even family court, you do not know what your rights are. So because of that, people are immediately intimidated, right? Nobody's going to tell you what your rights are in this country.
Exactly.
The police are going to read your rights to you, and then tell you, do you understand the rights that I've read to you? And they're going to ask you yes or no. And you're going to say, yeah. Do you really understand what I just said to you? Do you really understand what your rights are as a defendant?
Absolutely.
As
not,
a
because
party?
if they understood that the moment the police officer said you have the right to remain silent, most of these men that go to prison wouldn't go to prison if
Right.
they knew that they had their right to remain silent, because they don't remain silent. They say yes, and then they write a statement.
Mhm.
And start answering questions.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And, I can tell you, when you are in custody and you're not under arrest, you're being questioned by the police. Most people do not know that you have the right to get up and walk out of that room at any given point. You can stop and say, I'm not going to answer any more of your questions. I'm going home. Am I under arrest? No, you're not. Then I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do not know that. So when they walk into the courtroom, which is in the Constitution, or the Supreme Court has found that places like police stations and courtrooms are inherently prejudicial. People are intimidated.
Mhm.
You see the judge sitting up there and the bailiff and this and that, and you know the legacy of the court system as it relates to people of color.
Mhm.
You are intimidated. You do not understand your rights. And next thing you know, you just hit with a child support order. You know, all you hear is $2,000 a month. You didn't hear nothing else. Didn't understand anything else the judge said, but you heard that, note those numbers.
The arrears, not realizing why they owe arrears, that they start charging you for child support the day she filed.
Right.
And you know, and you guys say, well, how do I owe $7,000? Because she filed for child support and she waited to the very last moment to serve you with the papers,
Mhm.
and then you had to go to court a week later.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So guess what? She filed 3 months ago, and that's when your child support order started, when she filed.
So would you agree that that's probably a good place to start with trying to make sure that our men or our non-custodial parents are educated
Absolutely.
on the fact that they have a right to see their children,
Absolutely.
and you have a right to ask for visitation, and you have a right to question the amount of child support that you are given, and you have a right to representation, and you have a right. So how do we get that word out?
Well, you know, talking about it on the show, right? Hopefully it sparks some interest by some people who have been part of the system to maybe have their cases reevaluated, because you can do that. Absolutely. You can go back and you can have your court order or your child support order reevaluated, modified, right? Because you're paying too little. In some cases, you're paying too much. So those are things that you have at your disposal that you can do, but people are not aware. And again, people are intimidated by this whole building, the courthouse. People are intimidated because for men, right, typically, what is the outcome? Is it good? Is it in their favor?
I think that there are times where it goes good, but I think
that's probably.
But I think that what's important to just consider momentarily is that, does going good equate to you didn't have to pay anything? Because you got to take care of the kids. So going good just means that you went in, and to me, going good means you went in, you got visitation rights for your kids, right? You're gonna pay child support. There's no way to get around that, right? You're gonna pay child support unless you're committed to practicing some integrity, and you and the mother are able to sit and co-parent and come up with something, right? And then it's important to say this. Then when you come up with that, stand on that. And walk it out.
Right.
Make sure you practice integrity and do the right thing and be a man of your word. I don't know what happened. Somewhere along the way we got lost. Do you remember our generation? What did we used to say? My word is my bond.
Word is bond.
Right. My word is bond. What happened to that?
But you know what? When you look at the court system right now, with the family court and child support, right? 90% of the time, like you said, most men want to be good fathers. There's a lot of men are great fathers. I sat in child support court, all right, and I paid child support for my children, right? And I'm the world's greatest dad, all right, and I spoiled my kids, gave them the world and everything in it, right? But most men find themselves in that situation because that woman, that baby mother, is salty. Because sometimes, you know, we outgrow each other. All right? It doesn't mean we don't love each other, but we just outgrow each other. And we decide that we want to go our separate ways. And sometimes you're pulled into a family court situation because your significant other, or your ex, your baby mama, you want to call her, sometimes you're only in family court because you're no longer with her. It's not because you're not a father to your child. It's not because you don't take care of the child. It's just because she's salty and she says, well, I don't want you to take care of another child somewhere else, or be a great dad somewhere else, or be with another woman. I want to hurt you financially, so maybe you'll come back to me. Because I sit in a room, and you can look in family court. You can sit there and look around, and you can see the men who have a relationship with their children, as opposed to the men who don't have a relationship with their children. You can see that, and you can sit there and see all those women that's sitting there with their arms crossed. They mad at the world, and the kid want to talk with his dad. His dad sitting on the other side of the room, and he wants to be with his dad. He wants to, he want mommy and daddy to be together, because there obviously something's wrong there. But at the end of the day, most of those guys that I would see in the courtroom, I had an attorney, but these guys didn't have attorneys. They didn't know better. But most of the time, I saw angry women for the men who had relationships with their children. And the guys who didn't have a relationship with their women, those women wasn't angry, because they knew what they were dealing with. They knew he wasn't shit from top to bottom.
You're so funny.
They knew it.
So, but would you think that it's fair to say that maybe it could go either way? Like, I think the issue that I have with it is that we keep chunking everybody into these groups, right? Because there's a lot of women. There are women who are angry and, to use your words, Terry, salty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there are a lot of women who want to do the right thing and they're not getting any cooperation. So I think that it's some of everybody mixed in one big barrel, right? And then going right back to what I said, the poor people that's really suffering is the babies. The babies are suffering, right? Because even Terry said it, the kids are sitting in the courtroom and they looking and they want to go across the courtroom to their dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the kids are looking and they watching and they know they get to a certain age, because I say this all the time. You don't have to poison your kids, because your kids are going to get to a certain age where they're going to be able to identify those things themselves. So where you hear men say, she poisoned the kids, she poisoned the kids. The kids get to a certain age where the kids can look and see that daddy's either, like Terry said, there, or daddy is not there, right? The kids can, eventually, rationalize that, right?
You know what I found? And this goes criminal court, family court. The people who are in jeopardy criminally or in family court are middle class people. And I say that because poor people don't have anything. If you don't have a job, right, what are you going to do to me? You can rack up child support. You could say, $1 million. I don't have it.
Well,
you can put me in jail.
If you have nothing, they're only going to charge you $50.
Right.
So
you can't,
or a week or something like
you
that.
can't, you're not hurting me. I don't have any property you can seize, anything like that. Rich people can hire attorneys. You don't have to show up their attorney or put in an appearance for them. It's middle class people that have something to lose, right? Those are the ones that become the victims of the court system. Because if you have a home, right? Well, if you don't pay child support and you get enough in terms of arrearages, can they seize your property? Can they force you to sell that property? If you own a business and you're not paying child support, and you should be, can they, attach your wage garnishments, right? Wage attachments. Can they go to your business and say, look, you're going to have to sell this business to take care of your children? Rich people ain't concerned about that.
Well, they do have collections.
They do.
They do have collections for it.
Right. But if you don't have nothing, you can collect. Listen, you can threaten me all you want. I don't have nothing to give you.
Absolutely.
I don't have my own apartment. I live with my new girlfriend. She's the one that's working. I'm home. Right.
He went to move when he lived with his girlfriend now, so he can make some more babies.
There you go. So,
that's the guy I told you he wasn't shit.
Right. And you know what? I ain't got nothing. So when I go to court, if I show up, right, Your Honor, I ain't got nothing.
And guess what? I hope y'all ain't in a rush, because I got something else I want to talk about today too.
What's that?
TikTok.
Oh, wow.
You know why?
That's a
Because
whole nother subject.
you know why? Because when I say you knew what you was getting when you got it, right? A lot of those women that end up salty in family court, they forgot how they were gyrating on TikTok while they was advertising sex. And they met that guy and they had that sex because they was advertising sex. Then they had that baby, now they mad.
But you know something on the flip side of the coin, right? And we've been cautioning women, right? But for these young men, you must understand, brother, that okay, she got big hips, she might have big breasts, but she might not be the right fit for you. If you're gonna lay down with somebody, you have to think beyond, an hour from now, 6 months from now. You need to think, okay, if she gets pregnant, right, what am I going to do? Am I going to step up and be a parent? Or am I going to be that absentee, the guy that's ducking the system?
But Ron,
yep.
The problem is this. Her name is I'm a baddie number 125, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a baddie.
Right? His name is Get Money 226.
Right.
Right? So baddie linked up with Get Money 226. And they gave birth to Word is Bond God.
Right.
Guess what? Who the hell is he and who the hell is she?
Right.
And that's their problem.
Right.
Because
they don't know one another.
They don't know one another.
Right.
Because guess what? When we grew up, our family, there was a community. Right. Everybody in the neighborhood knew everybody's parents in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They knew everybody in the neighborhood. There's no sense of community anymore. So baddie number 123 and Get Money 226 can get together because he saw her on TikTok while she was doing her challenge, and he had his pants sagging and showed his little six-pack and whatnot, and they decided we're gonna link up, we're gonna do this. She don't even know what his government name is.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even know where he live at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
And she wasn't smart enough to get the license plate number off the car.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then, unfortunately, Terry was saying that then they have the little baby and name him God Allah.
Word is bond.
Word is bond. When they don't even know who that is, because
right.
there's some peace in that,
mm-hmm.
right? There's some righteousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Word is bond. What is it? God Allah.
Word
There's
bond,
some
God
righteousness.
Allah. Yeah.
Then people, somebody that's really walking in that life, they it's peace and it's righteousness that they live in by.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't even know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say they don't know.
Right.
They just don't know.
Right.
They don't know them. They don't know him. They don't know.
They don't know each other.
They don't know.
This is the world that we live in.
Yes.
Because guess what? These people, these young adults, and these teenagers, right? We are still paying the price for the 80s crack epidemic. We're still paying the price because grandma was too old to raise the kids. In some cases, grandma was on crack, the mom was on crack, and the kids had to raise themselves, right? So lack of knowledge got us jacked up. So pop culture has raised these kids and raised a lot of these adults that's out here today making babies because guess what? I've seen some videos on TikTok where we are the best example of our children.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a TikTok video with a young man throwing up his gang signs with a gun in his waistbelt. And he had his little son right behind him, teaching his son to throw up the gang signs.
Mm-hmm.
And they pulled the video down, and I hope they arrested him. But he literally let the little boy hold the gun. we are raising our kids via what we think is fun for likes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then you can look at the same TikTok videos, and you see these young mothers gyrating in their little spandex and biker shorts and all kinds of stuff they're wearing to that form-fitting clothes with their little daughters right behind them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you are raising hits, you know?
You know something, and
I agree.
this is a conversation that definitely has to continue because we kind of veered off the topic. But here's the thing that I think is important. One of the most important African proverbs is to know thyself.
Mm.
If you know yourself, right, then you understand your place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm definitely not a religious person. Do not attend church, temple, mosque, none of it. But I do understand that there are certain principles that we need to be guided by. And I tell this to young men all the time. A lot of young men will never open a Bible because they say, well, it's all fake stuff. But there are little bits of information you can glean from there. And one such piece of information is the Bible says, let us make man.
Mm.
It don't say anything about let us make a nigga, let us make a b-boy, let us make a thug. It says, let us make a man. We have accepted those terms and we have molded ourselves to fit into that box, that thug box, that nigga box, right? And we are reluctant to get out of that box. So we don't know who we are. So if you don't know who you are, how you gonna know who she is? How you gonna know who those children are? Because you don't understand your place in the world. You have no idea who you are or where you've come from. And that's why I said before and I say again, it is incumbent upon us to say to these young men, before you decide you're going to make a baby, before you decide that you want to go out and commit an act that's going to lock you into a system that's going to keep you in that system for the rest of your life, right? We got to get to these young people and we've got to let them know that there is a life beyond this, beyond the hood. And, you know, that can only be done by us. That's not a government program. That is a program that we have to create for ourselves.
I agree.
We have to create our own opportunities and our own system to teach or systems to teach our young people, right, who we are. Teach them responsibility. Give them the working knowledge they need to live in this country under this system.
I agree. I think that that's probably a good place for us to begin to close out the night. That we need to really start to see, you know, how we can begin to educate one another. And here's the deal, like if you listen to this and it's like pre-recorded and you listen to it and you need information, like if you contact the radio station, like I'd be volunteering, you need to know what your rights are. I'm going to tell you what your rights are, guys. You want to be a dad? I'm a kind of steer you in the direction. You need some counseling, I'll do some pro bono counseling. Like whatever you need to help you be a better father, whatever you need to try to figure out how can I co-parent. Maybe you need a session with you and her. Maybe you need, you know, a session with a mediator. Maybe you need somebody there so you can see, maybe you'll find out you guys do really have the same goals and objectives. You just can't get along long enough to be able to verbalize that to one another. So I think that this is a good place to end. And I do mean that, like, you know, by all means, you could reach out to the station and they'll put you in touch with me. Somebody will put you in touch with me so that we can have a conversation and guide you in the right direction. Because this really has to be each one teach one. And let's get the job done. And then I've been giving all this thought, Ron, to all these different topics, right? And so I wanted to say tonight that I think since we're talking about all these relationships,
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should have a conversation about these women and the sugar daddies and these old men.
Oh, okay. That would be interesting
I think we should do that.
because there's some deep stuff going on. You know what I mean? We're dealing with insecurities and things of that nature that we don't really think about when we see these older men with these younger girls.
Hmm.
But just to piggyback off what you said, if you just need an older brother to have a conversation with, reach out to me. You can go call the station, Facebook. My email address, ronl1649yahoo.com. Email me. And if you just need someone to listen, if you just feel you need guidance of an older brother who's been out there, who's experienced some life, reach out to me. I will always make myself available.
That he will. He'll make himself available. I'll make myself available. You can find me on Facebook too, Romanay Lashley. And I don't know, Ron. I think that's tying it up for tonight.
I think so. And it was a pleasure. We went a little, actually way over our time. But issues like this, there is so much enthusiasm that comes up, so many feelings and emotions that you can't do this all in just an hour.
Yeah.
So next week, what are we going to talk about next week?
We're going to talk about these sugar daddies.
We're going to talk about the sugar daddies. So y'all come back next week. And if you know any sugar daddies, make sure they are listening. Give them our phone number and tell them to call and give us their sugar daddy experiences.
All right, guys. We're going to say good night.
Why y'all talking about me?
I'm Romanay. That's Ron. Grace and peace.
Good night, folks.
Good night. The sugar daddies.